That completely ruined it. Which are we going to refer to now? Hi Vogue Philippines, my name is Artu Nepomuceno and I am a fashion and portrait photographer.
Hi, my name is Pepe Diokno and I'm a film director.
Hi, I'm Shaira. I'm a fashion and commercial photographer.
And we're at the SKYBAR at SOLAIRE Resort North as part of Glenfiddich Where Next Club.
Cheers. Cheers.
So, first question is, what is in your creative process, the key factor that brings you to explore a narrative, concept, or a photo?
I actually really begin constructing the narrative in my head when I see an object. Like, I know that's kind of unconventional, but when I see things, like things you can hold and things you can touch, that's when I start to imagine and try to picture in my head where would that object be used, who would be using it. So it really just starts from something small, and then I collaborate with other people to make it an image or a story.
I love that you mentioned the term unconventional. I think that fits similarly to what I do, but I think more in the terms of like finding a story. And I like that we kind of challenge ourselves to try to hunt for a story and makes it a little bit more organic, or at least more interesting, I guess, connected more to the subject and the person taking the photograph, at least for us.
You know, for me, my entry point is different for each film. Sometimes it's image, other times it's a character. I don't really have conventional approach to taking on a project.
So was there a particular project or moment where you think you took a risk as an artist?
So I started my career very early. I made my first film at 21. In hindsight, I wish that I had done more short films, or I wish I had taken on other roles. But I think a lot of risk. I borrowed money to make this film. I wasn't sure that they could pay that money back. But I think with the succeeding films, it's been more of like creative risks. With every film, I want to do something new, cover some sort of territory that I haven't done before.
Well, because coming from a non-artistic background, really, I was supposed to become a doctor. It was a really big risk, I think, getting into the creative side, because it wasn't really what was expected of me at that time. But I'm really happy I landed in photography. And every shoot that I took on early on, I think was a risk for me, because I didn't really have a photography education. Everything I did before, I really felt was risky, but everything paid off, hopefully.
Going back to the question, I think it was like a pivotal moment. I feel like my whole career changed after the Apo Wangod cover. I think that really just absolutely changed my life. I remember saying I can actually retire as a photographer and I'll feel completely fulfilled. For you as creatives, do you feel like your career or your path leads more towards evolution, and does that kind of go aligned with consistency, or do you feel like consistency is a dangerous word for our industry or our space?
That's a really good question, because I think our industry, specifically with advertising, rewards consistency, but at the same time you can't rest on that. Like, if you keep doing the same thing, then eventually you will sort of run out of steam, or people will get tired of it. So I think there is also a need to innovate. So it's both.
I've always been very playful. If we look back at the creative process, or how I really get into like creating these like shoots or like these little worlds, I've always been super curious and not really afraid to like go outside of like my so-called style, or what people think my style is. Like, I just really don't want to confine myself into like a certain genre or kind of photography.
I love consistency when it comes to process. I have like time set aside in my mornings for clerical work or doing the nitty-gritty, other times set for work that earns me money, and then other times that's set for creative work where I can just be free, and that's consistent every day. But parang framework or a skeleton of routine allows me to improvise, because at least I have like a solid foundation with which I can step on in order to push boundaries.
But if we speak of consistency, I think Artu is a great example. Your work is very, very consistent. And we're talking about the actual images. Like, you see a photo and you know it's poetry by Artu. How do you... Cheers.
How do you do that?
So how do you do that?
I'm consistently looking for chaos. I'm never comfortable in a shoot unless it's really messy. The only organized thing about the shoots is that we are trying to be messy. I personally believe that photography, with the right mindset or at least with the right collaboration, can actually be healing for people. In a way, I feel like that on my end is my way of kind of trying to push boundaries, where photography is beyond the aesthetics and beyond the messaging, but it's actually something fulfilling for the subject matter. Cheers.
Cheers.
Again.
So in your work, how do you balance artistic integrity with the need to be commercially viable?
I love that relationship between the two. If you don't do commercial work, then maybe your personal work is a little bit too disconnected from the ground, or where it's not anymore relatable. So I think the commercial aspect kind of grounds that. Very personal, or having a lot of personal time for your work keeps you very connected with yourself, where you're actually driven to do commercial work. How about you, Shai?
I think from the very beginning, even of my, at the beginning of my career, it was easy for me to separate work from play. Like a job is a job. I really enjoy commercial work because, one, it's technical, and since I don't have a photography background, it's like I'm also learning at the same time. And like what you said earlier, you're more in touch with, I guess, the market. I don't think I'd be this creative now if I didn't do commercial work.
So I have two answers to this question. The first is, personally as a director, my bread and butter is advertising, commercial work, and that fills my cup, and it allows me to do more artistic expression when I do films. So when I do films, it's not really for the money, it's really because I believe in the story. But then you get into other films, and because of the economics, you're forced to make decisions like, for example, casting so-and-so or making a so-and-so genre. So, or putting a product placement. So for me, I think whenever there's that consideration, I always go back to the core of why I want to do a story, the heart of the message of the story. And for as long as that's not, they don't ask me to revise that, then I'm good. So yeah, it's always about going back to that heart.
Right, so now that we're rather, I guess, comfortable in our careers, what were the challenges in the past that you had to overcome?
For me, one of the biggest challenges of becoming a photographer was actually when I was already a photographer. I came from culinary arts. Before shifting to photography, I actually first decided that I wanted to become a filmmaker like my grandfather. I told him very proudly, I want to become a filmmaker like you. And he looks at me and goes, no, you have to become a photographer first. My grandfather goes, if a movie is a story created with 1,000 images, you have to be able to tell a story with a single image first. And that kind of just stuck. And that became like my anchor. It became the foundations of everything. And that also came with a slight curse, which was no photograph is worth it unless there's a story written all over that image. And I think that all ties down with something that's very, very deeply connected with me. For the last 8 years, my wife and I have been part of a non-profit organization called Waves for Water. Honestly, the work that I do with this humanitarian organization is what grounds my work. And I think it adds so much depth to the craft because you're able to not help these communities, but you're actually learning their ways. You're learning their culture. You're learning what is important to them.
Yeah, what about you? What were the challenges?
No challenges.
Really? Because you started really young.
Oh yeah, no, I did. I started really young, and I think too young, and that's one of my regrets really, because I made my first film at 21 and I didn't know anything. We got a grant from Cinemalaya, but it was so bad. I was so inexperienced. From that first film, sort of rode this wave, but eventually that wave sort of fizzled out. And by the time I was 26, I didn't know who I was. So for 8 years, I stopped. I went into advertising, learned more about myself in the process, learned more about my craft also, and that's what has got me now to feel comfortable enough to go back into filmmaking. That was my whole 20s to 30s. There's a lot of struggle finding myself, also like you, and trying to find my place and trying to feel more comfortable with the craft.
Like you, I started the industry pretty young. I was 19 when I shot my first magazine editorial. But prior to that, I was really just watching bands and then taking pictures with a point and shoot camera and yeah, I just started shooting gigs. I didn't really have money because I left home at an early age. I didn't know how I would buy like memory cards or equipment. I even sold my flute to buy like my first small flash. And I really enjoyed playing the flute. So I think that was a turning point for me, that I was willing to sacrifice something I really enjoyed for something I wanted to explore. I just really tried everything because, like I said earlier, I don't have a photography education. I don't have a mentor. So I just really dove in and first. And yeah, after almost 20 years.
That's a great point. Like when you have the initiative, that's already yourself telling you that, hey, this is the path that maybe you should be on.
And if you find something really hard and challenging, that you look for it the day after, you know, that's it.
Where do you feel the future of storytelling is going, or where do you think its next destination is? Where is it going? Where next?
And there's going to be new platforms that we can't, really predict. Now we need to embrace the platforms that are coming out and that have already come out. I mean, right now the cinema industry isn't doing so well. People aren't going to the movie houses anymore. But I think the craft of filmmaking is alive in these platforms. I think these short online videos are a form of filmmaking. And I sort of hope that, like we saw with vinyl or with theater, because theater now is having a renaissance in the Philippines, these old mediums never really disappear. They can come back and thrive, and I hope that happens for the cinema-going experience.
For you, Shai, can I just maybe rephrase the question? What is the future that you dream our industry can be? And how do we get there?
I really have no answers. I've always looked to the past for answers, because it's not always answers I'm looking for. It's not always the future I want to know. I just want to embrace what is already available and what has been created. And I think I'm pretty okay there. And I can just watch the other mavericks and see what they do next.
And actually the love to learn more on the philosophy, where if there's an oversaturation of fashion or an oversaturation of photography or an oversaturation of images, how can we make images actually matter, not by quantity but by quality? I see an image and I don't think of it as timeless, but I think of it as life-changing. What is next for you, for the future of filmmaking in the Philippines?
I have a film in MMFF this year, which is a musical adaptation of Himala. No, Himala is the film from the 80s starring Nora Honor. It's been called the best film of all time, but we're making it into a musical written by Ricky Lee with an amazing cast. It is the most challenging film I think I've ever done. So
thank you.
This was fun.
This was so fun. I, for one, can say that I learned so much about the two of you. I have a longtime friend and a
new friend.
Yeah, and I'm not just inspired, but I've actually really learned a lot about the two of you and about how I can take my next steps.
Yeah, a lot of people look up to you as well, so it's also nice to be in this conversation and headspace also. And you too, Pepe.
thank you guys.
You're the cutest.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yes, cheers.
See you guys.